depression is your soul's way of telling you that it doesn't like the character that it's playing anymore.
Welcome to Self-Made and Sober. I'm your host, Andrew Lassis with selfmade-coaching.com. And in this podcast, it's my job to interview people who are not only crushing it in business, but have also struggled with addiction in the past and are in long-term recovery. Be sure to join our Facebook group where we help entrepreneurs grow and scale their business at facebook.com/groups/SMC Mastermind, like Self-Made Coaching Mastermind. I hope you enjoy the show, and be sure to subscribe and rate the show afterwards so you can get notified each Friday when we put out a new episode.
With me today on the podcast is Jake Cushing. Awesome background with Jake. When I started my company Rush Tech Support in my living room 5.5 years ago, a couple months down the road, a wonderful human being named Jake Cushing came into my life and helped us transform the company from $36,000 in the first year to $1.75 million in year 2. He is the brains behind everything that the company accomplished in that year. Jake, how you doing, man?
How's it going, man? That's a heck of shoes to walk in. I appreciate it, man. I think you had a whole lot to do with it, too.
Maybe it was like a combination, a good mix. Jake's been sober now since July 26, 2018. And you want to give us a little background on what your sobriety looked like, what happened, what's going on now? You want to give us just kind of a background pre-even sobriety and into what it's looking like today?
I think the biggest part of my story, when I first started, getting clean back in 2013, I just didn't think it was possible. I think that's a huge thing to touch on, because I used to say it in every single one of my stories that I would tell in like a 12-step program or anything like that. And I think when I got into the program, and I was just kind of like winging it. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know how to live life, like really actually live life. My entire life consists of using drugs and alcohol, and I really didn't know how to be a man or, even a human being, and so it all started 2013. I moved out to Florida. My mom had called some random number she saw in the phone book, and I was like, South Florida, it's like nice outside. Yeah, I'll be kicking and I'll be screaming, but might as well give it a shot. There'll probably be some pretty girls out there. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe just a little.
Yeah. So I started my journey that way, and I came out to South Florida. This is from heroin and pretty much anything I could get my hands on at that point in time. And I ended up being able to go from that to making like a whole network of friends through the 12-step program. And I didn't think that I was really capable of doing anything. I didn't think I could, read and write properly, much less, be a salesman or, anything like that. Started working for a company that, did sales, but they were extremely sketchy. And I had, Andrew, who was a huge part of my sobriety, and he still is up to this point. And we hit it off right from the start. I saw him at a meeting, and he saw my Ravens hoodie, and he said, "Oh, nice hoodie." And I said, I said, he said,
You're like,
cool.
will you sponsor me?
He says, cool. Yeah, I'll be your sponsor. Some other guy in the meeting says, he didn't ask if you wanted to be a sponsor.
That was Joe Never Fails.
Yeah, that
He's
was
like,
Joe. That was
I was like, I don't care.
Yeah, so me and Andrew hit it off right off the break. He's into food. We really got into, eating a lot of Chinese food or pizza, whatever we could get our hands on in South Florida.
So what were some of the strategies you were using at the time to stay sober and like get into the program? You were at a sketchy company, and then what?
So I was at a sketchy company. Emotional sobriety wasn't at its peak, if you will, and me and Andrew had this thing where I said, "Hey Andrew, maybe one day I'll end up working for you."
I remember that, man. That's crazy.
Yeah. So after getting enough sales experience, I ended up just, randomly, there was no like big story behind it. I just randomly like started making sales for them, on the weekends, when I had my time off and stuff like that. And I'd make like maybe like $100, $200 sale or something like that. And we'd party with a whole bunch of food.
We'd blast Montel Jordan. This is how we do it.
Yeah.
So Rush is in its infancy at that time. And what were some of the things that, like, you didn't have experience in growing a company? Where did that spirit of let's grow it and roll the dice come from?
I think a lot of it comes from like humans winging it. And by that, I mean, like, nobody really has a super set plan. And even if you do have your set plans, it never works out the way exactly that you want it to. And I think that coming from a position of humbleness and not really knowing what's going to happen is probably where you get your biggest projects and the biggest things happen in your life. Because I can name on multiple occasions where other things have happened besides that have been huge in my life as well. I never expect to date the girls that I end up dating. I never expect to, be friends with some of the people that are like the biggest positive influences in my life. I kind of just took a leap of faith and said, I'm out here in South Florida. I don't have any family. I have friends. I have plenty of friends. I might as well give it a shot. And that's probably the best place that I could have been. They have that terminology where they say you never feel like you work a day in your life if you do what you love. But I don't really believe that to be true because you work. The jumping off point, we definitely had a lot of fun building the company, and I had the best years of my life in Florida and helping to build that company, and I would never trade it. And experiencing new things that maybe scare you or whatever, but I had family members and stuff that supported me, but I had no real backing. I had no sort of money saved up or anything like that. I just figured give it a shot. Worst case scenario, can always move back to Maryland. I don't know.
Yeah, having that safety net fallback plan. I think a lot of people, they'll just let fear take control on everything, and it's like, well, what if it fails? What if it doesn't work out? 9 out of 10 startups go out of business. None of us have any experience in doing this. What in the world's going to make us think that we could actually do more than run this thing out of Andrew's halfway house living room and then upgrade to Andrew's apartment living room to upgrade to Suite 9 and then 10 and then 12 and 3 and then Delray office at 13, like all the crazy growth that happened as a result of walking through that fear. And you're right, like when you when you lay it out and it's like, well, worst case scenario, I'll just move back home and keep living my life. I think a lot of people, they just have that fear of failure and they just end the conversation right there instead of just going with it. A lot of people have fear drive them to not take the leap of faith into the thing that they really want to do. What was going through your head this is 2014, when you made the leap and had Rush be your full-time job, even though it was extremely all over the place and didn't have a steady income the way that your other job did?
I think it was a fuck it mentality. Like, really, it was just, you know, I don't have a safety net. So if I don't have a safety net and, you know, there's like a pit at the bottom and I got to climb up this thing, but there's no safety net, then you got to climb it anyway. So I might as well do it, right? I mean, that's kind of what happened, you know. I didn't have any, like I said, I didn't have any friends. I didn't have any family. You know, I had the 12-step program and, you know, and God by my side. And did I really have that much faith in it? No, I didn't. And this is, you know, coming from a complete place of honesty. I didn't really have much faith that it was gonna work out. I just, you know, wherever the cards may lay, and just, you know, threw myself to the wind, and whatever happens, happens. I didn't think too much, you know.
But do you have any sort of rituals or like things that you make sure that you do every single day to help you maintain your sobriety and or good work ethic?
Well, every morning I start off, I do the 3rd step prayer and the 7th step prayer. And I've done that. Even that this is another entire part of my story, but when I ended up going back to drinking, even during my drinking days, I was still a 3rd step prayer, 7th step prayer every morning. And I think that, and, you know, meditation and, you know, a practice in keeping myself grounded in a higher power and in the earth, if you will, in the universe, if you will, is a huge part of it as well. I think that I've done that on the daily since I was a kid. Not the 3rd step, 7th step prayer, but I always try to put myself in a place mentally to, you know, to I don't know, get a better grasping, a better foothold, if you will. Yeah, I think that's.
So you're using the 3rd and 7th step prayer. So just for those that aren't familiar, the 3rd step prayer is basically turning your will and your life over to something bigger than you, and the 7th step is removing your defects that are getting in the way from whatever the bigger thing in the universe is. Call it God, call it nature, call it whatever you want to call it. The idea is that you remove the things that are getting in your way so that you can do a better job at letting things fall. So kind of your fuck it mentality is like a funner way of saying you turned your will over to your higher power and let the cards fall as they were. Is that a fair assessment?
I think that is a very fair assessment. The whole fuck it mentality, I mean, fuck it is a natural statement, right? You ever get pulled over by the police and you say, fuck it, I'm going to jail.
Yeah, that's what I said when I got arrested. It's like, going to jail. Fuck. Fuck it, I'm going to jail. I'm wasted. Let's drink this bottle of Fireball before I get booked.
Did you really do that?
Yeah, I drank a 5th of Fireball while I was getting pulled over, and so I got charged with drinking while driving on top of DUI. I got consuming an alcoholic beverage while operating a motor vehicle. I think was like the legal term for it. But yeah, drinking while driving,
Were you able to
while getting pulled
were
over.
you able to maintain your drunkenness throughout your booking?
I blacked out jail. I mean, like jail, like the drunk tank, like getting. I blacked out the whole getting arrested thing. I briefly remember seeing I came out of a blackout and I saw in the rearview mirror the red and blue lights flashing, and I had about half of a fifth of Fireball left, and I was like, well, I'll just finish this off because I didn't want to get an open container charge, but I didn't hide the bottle, so I still got an open container charge as well as drinking while driving, as well as blowing a .24. So I added a whole bunch of extra felonies and misdemeanors because of that micro decision. I added like an extra 3 things to the laundry list of everything that was happening at the time. So yeah, I learned my lesson, but silver lining of it, I ended up going to treatment and got sober, and things ended up working out for the better. So you said that you always had a idea of a higher power or something bigger than you, and has that grown since you got into recovery?
Yes. I started out. Um, I remember when I was with my fiance, and we were getting high and drunk, or whatever we could get our hands on, and every once in a while there would be this point where I would want to like meditate like Avatar style. so like I don't know, like I would remember, like how in Dragon Ball Z they would meditate and do really cool things afterwards, or Avatar would do it, and I remember just sitting there, and I really wanted power. I wanted some sort of power to like come from the sky and to help me with what was going on in my life. And it did. It certainly did. Maybe not the way that I had pictured it, but it certainly did. I ended up meeting one of the biggest spiritual advisors I've ever met in my life, who I actually stayed with for a period of time with my fiance, and he had me drop to my knees in the middle of Eastern Avenue in Marlin, and it's kind of like a major intersection in Essex, and I did that. And slowly but surely, after that prayer, and after having an honest sincerity to like want to get clean, or I didn't really want to get clean, but having the honest sincerity to want my higher power to help me, I started to slowly but surely, come to terms with, my sobriety. And my girlfriend at the time, who was stealing jeans from Nordstrom, or my fiance, she ended up getting locked up, and I ended up getting locked up before she did. But my parents would always bail me out, not my dad so much, but my mother, she would always bail me out of jail. She, wonderful woman. She didn't know how to not coddle me and enable me, and she ended up bailing me out. But by the time I got bailed out, she got caught up, and she was wanted for more than that. She ended up, because of this jeans for Nordstrom's thing, they developed a whole profile of what is it called? can't remember what the name of it is. They developed a whole profile of her basically stealing the jeans, and it ended up being in the thousands of dollars, and she ended up getting locked up. And so I was left without a fiance, in my presence, and left on my own devices. And that's when my mother gave me the phone number. I called, and when I called, I don't know what took over me, but I was like, I don't know this person. They'll probably never meet me ever. I'm just going to drop my entire story on her lap and see what the freak happens. And so that's what I did. I spilt my guts to this person over the phone that I've never talked to before in my entire life. And I told her my whole life story and how much of a fuck up I was and how much of a destructive alcoholic and an addict I was. And they got me on a plane the next day. They wanted to get me on a plane that day, but I had a little bit more to do before I came out to Florida.
Yeah, I had to get your last hoorah. I remember my last hoorah. I had a party. I invited all my friends, and only one person showed up, and that was kind of like my damn, man. Like even my last hoorah, like no one's trying to be involved with me at all. I'm just not a person that people want to be around. And once I came to that conclusion and like accepted it, I continued to move forward and grow and try a new way of life where I'm focusing on spiritual principles instead of focusing on what I think is going to be best for me. And then just the results speak for themselves. None of the cool things that we've been able to accomplish have anything to do with like me. This is all about the right people, the right place, the right time, having my higher power guide the direction of everything that was happening, and we didn't have any clue what we were doing jumping into it. We were just like, God, I'll take control and we'll see what happens. So when you you mentioned that you had a slip up and came back. So what are you doing differently this time? Now you have over a year on your time back. What lessons did you learn from the first time?
So I'm going to give a little bit of a background, just briefly, and this will help to sum it all up. So when I came back to Maryland, I had gotten drunk in Florida after 2.5 years of continuous sobriety, and I ended up, I don't know. I was in the tech office at the time, and I decided that I was going to try some controlled drinking, and it worked great for me for a while, for actually quite some time. My progression seems to be a little bit slower than some's, and so I ended up, drinking at so the first time I drank at I drank at camping with my father. We went to Harper's Ferry, West Virginia, and I decided to get a 6-pack of Corona. And I woke up the next day, and I expected this huge dread and this huge terribleness, and I even had like a bad dream that night. And I woke up, and I just, nothing happened. I didn't feel bad. It was probably the worst place for me to be at because nothing happened. And so I went ahead and I drank for a couple more years, and then I got to the point where I was just tired of living the way that I was living again. And that's when I turned back to my higher power, and I, said that sincere prayer again. And I didn't even realize that I did that until I just said that. But, I said that sincere prayer to God, and I ended up back in Right Turn of Maryland, and I went to that program. So this time, I think that, I have sat here and analyzed a lot of what I did to stay sober back then and what I do to stay sober now. And it's not really too much different. I think the biggest thing that I learned from going back out and drinking is that I can't do that successfully either. And that's a big lesson to learn. I've always seen my father drinking. He'll drink, every single night, wake up the next day, be fine, drink his coffee in the morning. Not me. I wake up the next morning, and I'm drinking, hard liquor and early in the morning. So, I kind of like had this vision of like me being like my father and in that respect, and like I could still drink, but that's just not what I'm here for. And what I mean by that is my higher power doesn't want me to be that guy, or there's a quote by Jim Carrey, and you'll like this one too, Andrew. So Jim Carrey says, depression is your soul's way of telling you that it doesn't like the character that it's playing anymore. My soul was the character that I didn't like playing anymore. So so I just didn't want to be that guy. And deep down, even though like some parts of me like wanted to, be drunk every day and live my life that way, it's just not where I was meant to be. I believe that, around Essex, I'm kind of like, and I'm not gonna blow myself up over here, but I'm kind of like a go-to guy when it comes to like sobriety and things like that. I've already had, several friends around here that ask me, I'm trying to get clean. Like, what can I do? And I have had a couple of people that have gotten clean around me as well. And, that feels really good. I think being a part of their lives has been the pinnacle. And they even tell you that in the 12-step program is, the people that you help, the newcomers that are coming in are the most important people, because those are the people that help keep us sober.
Yeah, you get to keep what you have by giving it away. You got to act as a river and let it flow through you to the next piece instead of the reservoir that just holds it all and hoards it for later. It's just always flowing through, and it's always fresh when it's always flowing. So, Jake, I want to be conscious of your time, but if there's one piece of advice you could give to someone who's trying to get sober, what would you say is the most important thing that someone should do?
Take an honest look at where you're at in your life, and if you're aware, because I think that sobriety has a lot to do with awareness, and take a look at where you are. I remember when I first got into the watershed in Florida, they asked me what I was doing, and I told them I was living in the Mexican's garage, drinking and getting high. But it wasn't that bad. And they were like, look at you. You're what's the word for it? Yeah, no, that's it. That's it. I was not verifying, but I'm talking about. So I think the biggest thing is, take a step back from, if you can, take a step back from drinking and just be aware of your surroundings and see. And if that's not really where you want to be in your life, then have a fuck it mentality and go into a program, or if you can't do that, just go to the rooms.
Yeah, the rooms of 12-step recovery, I know, have helped millions of people, and they sometimes get a bad rep from people that don't have the fuck it mentality. They want to hang on to their old way of thinking as well as take on a new way, but they kind of straddle both, and then when you straddle them both, you're not actually going forward with the new way of living. You're living in fear of changing the way that it used to be, which isn't getting you the results that you want. So I think that's great. The awareness is huge, because if you're not aware of the problem, then how are you supposed to fix it? But then the next step is having that willingness to move forward with a different way of living. And it's funny because we will fight tooth and nail to justify, I want to stay in this guy's garage. This is what I want. And it's like, you don't actually want that. It's just what you know. And you're afraid of what might happen, because what if somehow it's worse? And that's kind of the lie we tell ourselves. But Jake, thank you so much for being on the show. You've dropped a ton of nuggets. Where can people find you online if they want to learn more about the stuff that you're doing?
You can find me on Facebook at Jake Cushing, and also Instagram, Jay Cushes Me.
Thank you so much for listening to Self-Made and Sober. Be sure to join our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/SMC Mastermind, like Self-Made Coaching Mastermind. I hope you enjoyed the show, and be sure to subscribe and rate the show so you can get notified each Friday when we put out a new episode.